Welcome to another peaceful journey through the corridors of time, dear friend. Before we begin tonight's exploration into one of history's most fascinating hypothetical confrontations, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you find understanding and solace in these historical bedtime stories, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps more people discover these gentle adventures through time, and it lets me know you're enjoying our nighttime wanderings through the tapestry of human history. Now, settle in comfortably as we drift back through the centuries to witness a battle that never was but could have been. A clash between two of history's most magnificent warrior traditions. Close your eyes and let yourself journey to the moment when East meets West, when the thunder of Polish hooves meets the whispered steel of Japanese blades. Tonight, I invite you to witness the ultimate warrior confrontation, Polish Winged Hussars versus Japanese samurai. From their origins as Serbian exiles to becoming Europe's most feared cavalry. And from humble bodyguards to Japan's most revered warrior class, these two martial traditions represent the pinnacle of their respective civilizations. Let me guide you through this remarkable comparison, feeling the weight of history itself as we explore who might triumph in this legendary matchup. The foundations of legend, origins, and evolution. Our tale begins in two distant corners of the world, where two very different warrior traditions took root and flourished. In the aftermath of the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, Serbian knights known as Hussars found themselves homeless, driven from their lands by the expanding Ottoman Empire. These proud warriors, carrying centuries of cavalry traditions from the Byzantine steppes, made their way northward into Poland, offering their services to nobles who recognized their exceptional horsemanship. Meanwhile, across the vast expanses of Asia, in the island nation of Japan, a different warrior tradition was emerging. During the Heian period, 794 of 1185, aristocratic guards called samurai evolved from simple bodyguards protecting court nobles in Kyoto into a distinct warrior class. Where the Polish Hussars emerged from displacement and exile, the samurai arose from the need to protect Japan's elegant poetry-writing aristocracy from increasingly bold bandits and raiders. The transformation of these Serbian exiles into the legendary Winged Hussars began under King Stephen Báthory in 1576. Báthory, a Hungarian prince who understood the potential within these rough cavalrymen, implemented revolutionary reforms that would create the most effective heavy cavalry in European history. He recruited from the wealthy Polish nobility, the szlachta, men who could afford the enormous expense of maintaining multiple horses, specialized weapons, and trained retinues. The samurai's evolution followed a different path entirely. From their origins as mounted archers during the Heian period, they gradually developed into a sophisticated warrior class governed by Bushido, the way of the warrior. Unlike the hussars who specialized in devastating cavalry charges, samurai warfare emphasized individual skill, honor, and a complex relationship between mounted archery and close combat techniques. The science of war, training, and preparation. The effectiveness of both warrior traditions lay not merely in their courage, but in their revolutionary approaches to military training. Polish culture revered horses to such a degree that a popular saying declared, "A pole without a horse is a body without a soul." Young Polish nobles began riding before they could properly walk, developing an intuitive connection with their mounts that enabled the precise coordination essential to hussar tactics. Hussar training was methodical and relentless. Each hussar towarzy's companion was required to maintain his own pokset or retinue, typically consisting of 3 to 5 men, including himself, his squire, a standard bearer, and various attendants. This system ensured that each hussar unit was essentially a small military family, bound by personal loyalty and mutual dependence that created unbreakable bonds on the battlefield. The horses themselves represented a revolution in military breeding. Unlike the massive destriers of Western European knights, hussar mounts were bred from a careful combination of Polish and Eastern stock, usually incorporating Tatar bloodlines that provided speed, endurance, and agility. These horses could carry the enormous weight of a fully armored hussar while maintaining the speed necessary for their distinctive charge tactics. Polish law imposed the death penalty for selling hussar horses outside the Commonwealth, demonstrating how jealously they guarded this advantage. Samurai training followed entirely different principles. Beginning in childhood, young samurai learned not just swordsmanship but archery, which was considered the primary skill of a warrior. The famous asymmetrical yumi bow, shorter on the bottom to facilitate shooting from horseback, exemplified the samurai's adaptation to mounted warfare. However, Japanese horses were fundamentally different from their Polish counterparts. Smaller, weaker, and capable of only limited speeds while carrying armored riders. Contemporary European observers noted that Japanese horses could achieve no more than 9 kilometers per hour when carrying a fully armored samurai, often dropping to a trot rather than maintaining a proper gallop. This limitation fundamentally shaped samurai tactics, preventing the kind of devastating cavalry charges that made the hussars legendary. The art of armor, protection, and mobility. The armor worn by these warriors reveals profound differences in their approach to warfare. Hussar armor was a masterpiece of engineering that balanced protection with mobility, comprising plated body armor including cuirass, spalders, befores, and arm bracers, all adorned with gold ornaments. The complete kit weighed approximately 15 kilograms, 33 pounds. This relatively light weight allowed hussars to maintain speed and agility while providing substantial protection against contemporary weapons. The iconic hussar helmet, whether the comb-like Pschological, Burgonet, or Mauryan style, featured heart-shaped cheek pieces and adjustable nasal guards terminating in leaf-shaped visors. The armor was deliberately designed to deflect rather than absorb blows, with curved surfaces that could turn aside enemy weapons while maintaining the wearer's mobility. Samurai armor followed a fundamentally different philosophy. Traditional samurai armor consisted of small iron or leather plates, scales, laced together with silk or leather cords. This construction provided flexibility and the ability to absorb impacts while maintaining mobility, but offered different protective characteristics than European plate armor. The distinctive features included the menacing kabuto helmet, with its prominent decorations and the flowing design that emphasized both protection and psychological impact. However, historical analysis suggests that Japanese armor provided less protection than European plate armor, particularly against firearms. When Portuguese matchlocks arrived in Japan during the 16th century, many daimyo quickly adopted Western-style breastplates, nanbando gusoku, or created domestic imitations, recognizing that traditional lamellar construction offered inferior protection against bullets. The weight difference was significant. While hussar armor weighed around 15 kilograms, this was offset by their superior horses. Japanese warriors, riding smaller mounts, had to carefully balance protection against the carrying capacity of their horses. This fundamental limitation meant that even though samurai armor might have been lighter in absolute terms, the relative burden on their mounts was actually greater. Weapons of war, steel and strategy. The weapons carried by these warriors reflected their different tactical roles and combat environments. Hussars were armed for shock combat with an array of weapons designed to maximize the impact of their cavalry charges. Their primary weapon, the cobia lance, stretched up to 6 meters in length, longer than virtually any pike formation they would encounter. These lances were masterpieces of military engineering, crafted from hollowed fir wood for lightness while maintaining strength, and designed to penetrate enemy formations before defenders could bring their weapons to bear. Beyond the lance, hussars carried a devastating array of backup weapons. A long, thrusting sword called a kansers for penetrating armor, a curved sabla saber for close combat, 2 to 6 pistols, often a carbine or arquebus, and sometimes a war hammer or battle axe. This arsenal ensured that hussars remained effective throughout all phases of combat, from the initial charge through prolonged melee fighting. Samurai weaponry emphasized versatility and individual skill over the shock tactics favored by hussars. The katana, with its distinctive curved blade optimized for slashing attacks, was paired with the shorter wakizashi to form the daisho, the symbol of samurai status. The katana's design reflected centuries of refinement for single combat, with its balance optimized for quick draw techniques and flowing cutting motions. However, the yumi bow remained the samurai's primary battlefield weapon for much of their history. These asymmetrical longbows, made from bamboo, wood, and leather, could reach 2 meters in length, and required extensive training to master. Samurai archers were capable of accurate shooting from horseback, a skill that complemented their mobility-focused tactics. The introduction of the yari spear during the Sengoku period marked a significant shift in samurai warfare. As mounted archery became less effective against disciplined infantry formations, samurai adapted by adopting spear-based tactics that allowed them to deliver something approaching a cavalry charge. The naginata, a pole weapon with a curved blade, provided additional reach and cutting power for both mounted and dismounted combat. The psychology of war, wings and honor. Perhaps no aspect of these warrior traditions is more fascinating than their psychological warfare techniques. The Winged Hussars' famous wings were far more than decorative elements. They were sophisticated tools of terror. These magnificent constructions, crafted from eagle feathers and mounted on elaborate frames attached to their armor or saddles, created a supernatural appearance that struck fear into enemy hearts. Contemporary accounts describe the psychological impact of 3,000 winged horsemen, cresting a hill in perfect formation, as devastating to enemy morale. The sight of these angels of death thundering toward enemy lines, their wings spread wide and their lances leveled, convinced many opponents that they faced not mere mortals, but divine instruments of vengeance. The wings also created acoustic effects during charges, producing a rustling thunder that added to their terrifying impact. Samurai psychology operated on entirely different principles. Rather than seeking to terrify through supernatural appearance, samurai warfare emphasized personal honor and ritual combat. The famous practice of fighting for the honor of being first spear, the first warrior to engage the enemy, reflected a mindset focused on individual achievement rather than collective shock tactics. Samurai armor incorporated spiritual elements designed to channel divine power rather than inspire terror. The armor had to be attuned with the 5 Taoist elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Helmet type, colors, and even the horse's color had to align with the cycle of creation rather than the cycle of destruction. The hole at the apex of the helmet, called the vent to the sky, was believed to allow the great serpent god of war to descend and empower the warrior. Tactical doctrines, charge versus finesse. The fundamental tactical approaches of these warriors could hardly have been more different. Huzawa Fair was built around the devastating mounted charge, a carefully orchestrated sequence that demonstrated the sophistication of their training. Beginning at a walk for the first 75 meters, the formation would transition to a trot, then a canter, and finally a full gallop for the crucial final 30 meters before impact. This preserved the horse's energy for repeated charges, while maintaining formation integrity until the crucial moment of contact. The charge itself combined physical and psychological elements in devastating synergy. The sight of thousands of armored horsemen with wings spread wide, charging in perfect formation, while their lances created a forest of steel points, broke enemy morale before physical contact even occurred. The 18-foot lances gave hussars a decisive reach advantage over any infantry formation, allowing them to penetrate pike squares before defenders could bring their weapons to bear. Most importantly, hussars were trained for repeated charges, unlike traditional heavy cavalry that might make one assault and then withdraw. Hussar formations could charge, withdraw, regroup, and charge again multiple times in a single battle. There were recorded instances of the same hussar units charging 10 times in a single engagement, a testament to their superior training and the endurance of their horses. Samurai tactics emphasized individual prowess within coordinated formations. During the Sengoku period, samurai armies combined mounted warriors with disciplined ashigaru, foot soldiers in sophisticated tactical arrangements. The typical battle formation placed archers and foot soldiers in front, with the samurai cavalry positioned behind them for the decisive charge. However, Japanese cavalry tactics were constrained by the limitations of their horses. Rather than the sustained charges favored by hussars, samurai cavalry operated more as mobile strike forces, hitting specific points in enemy formations before withdrawing. The phrase "charge straight into the enemy," mixed from contemporary accounts, should be understood in the context of Japanese horses that could barely maintain a canter while carrying armored riders. The science of combat, reach and technique. In any hypothetical encounter between these warriors, the question of reach would prove decisive. The hussar's 6-meter kopia lance provided an enormous advantage over any weapon in the samurai arsenal. Even the longest naginata pole weapons used by samurai rarely exceeded 3 meters, giving hussars a clear advantage in the initial phases of combat. This reach advantage was not merely theoretical. The hussar lance was specifically designed to outreach infantry pikes, which typically measured 5 meters in length. Against a samurai armed with a katana, approximately 1 meter blade, or even a yari spear, 3 to 4 meters, the hussar could deliver killing blows while remaining completely outside the range of retaliation. However, the effectiveness of the lance depended entirely on the charge. Polish sources make clear that lances were designed to break upon impact, serving as single-use weapons that maximize the shock of the initial assault. Once the lance was gone, combat would transition to closer quarters, where the samurai's superior individual fighting skills might prove decisive. The katana represented centuries of refinement in blade design, optimized for both cutting and thrusting in individual combat. Samurai techniques like aido emphasized the lightning-fast draw and cut, potentially giving skilled practitioners an advantage in close combat against opponents trained primarily for mounted warfare. The simultaneous draw and strike technique could prove devastating against a hussar who had lost his primary weapon. Nevertheless, hussars carried extensive backup armaments, specifically for close combat. The Konzer's thrusting sword was designed for penetrating armor, while the sabla saber was considered one of the finest cutting weapons ever used by a European army. Polish sabers were renowned for their endurance in prolonged combat, suggesting that hussars were well prepared for extended melee fighting. Horses, the decisive factor. In any encounter between mounted warriors, the quality of their horses would prove absolutely critical. Here, the Polish advantage was overwhelming. Hussar horses were the product of centuries of selective breeding, combining Polish and Eastern bloodlines to create animals specifically designed for heavy cavalry warfare. These horses could carry over 100 kilograms of rider and equipment while maintaining high speeds and quick recovery. Contemporary sources describe hussar horses as immune to the sound of musket and cannon fire, and capable of running fast while carrying a heavy load and recovering quickly, and maintaining stamina. The death penalty for selling these horses outside the Commonwealth demonstrates their strategic importance. Japanese horses presented a stark contrast. European observers consistently noted their small size and limited capabilities. Jesuit Louis Foy described Japanese horses as difficult to control, small, and weak compared to European mounts. Modern testing with ponies of similar size to historical Japanese horses found they could achieve no more than 9 kilometers per hour while carrying a fully armored rider. This fundamental limitation shaped all aspects of samurai warfare. The inability to deliver truly devastating cavalry charges forced samurai to develop alternative tactics based on mobility and individual skill, rather than shock impact. While these adaptations were sophisticated and effective within the context of Japanese warfare, they would prove inadequate against an opponent specifically designed to exploit superior horsepower. Armor effectiveness, East meets West. The protection offered by each warrior's armor would play a crucial role in determining combat outcomes. Historical analysis consistently shows that European plate armor provided superior protection compared to Japanese lamella construction. The curved surfaces of hussar armor were specifically designed to deflect incoming blows, while the segmented nature of samurai armor, while flexible, offered multiple potential penetration points. The introduction of firearms highlighted these differences dramatically. When Portuguese matchlocks arrived in Japan, many daimyo immediately adopted Western-style breastplates, recognizing the superiority of solid plate construction against projectiles. The flat surfaces of traditional Japanese armor absorbed the full impact of bullets, while European armor's curved design could deflect rounds if struck at the proper angle. Against the thrusting weapons favored by hussars, Japanese armor would prove particularly vulnerable. The Hussar's sword was specifically designed for penetrating armor, and the jointed construction of samurai armor provided numerous gaps that a skilled opponent could exploit. While the katana was optimized for cutting attacks that worked well against the lamellar construction of Japanese armor, it was less effective against the solid plates used in European designs. However, samurai armor did offer advantages in terms of mobility and flexibility. The segmented construction allowed for greater range of motion, potentially giving samurai warriors an edge in ground combat if they could close to effective range. The elaborate helmet designs also provided excellent protection for the head and neck, areas that were particularly vulnerable in close combat. The verdict: analysis of the ultimate matchup. In analyzing this hypothetical confrontation, we must consider multiple scenarios and factors that would influence the outcome. The tactical situation, terrain, numbers involved, and specific circumstances would all play crucial roles in determining which warrior tradition would prevail. Scenario 1. Single combat on foot. In individual combat on foot, the samurai would possess several significant advantages. Their training emphasized personal skill and technique to a degree that exceeded hussar preparation. The katana's design and the associated fighting techniques represented centuries of refinement, specifically for single combat. Samurai training in multiple weapons, including the use of both katana and wakizashi simultaneously, provided tactical flexibility that could prove decisive. However, the hussar's armor advantage would remain significant. The superior protection offered by European plate armor would make it extremely difficult for a katana to deliver decisive blows. Meanwhile, the hussar's concert's thrusting sword was specifically designed to penetrate armor, giving Polish warriors a weapon optimized for the task at hand. The deciding factor would likely be training and experience. Samurai received more extensive individual combat training, while hussars focused primarily on coordinated cavalry tactics. In a prolonged ground combat, the samurai's superior skill in personal combat would likely overcome the hussar's equipment advantages. Scenario 2. Mounted combat. On horseback, the advantages shift dramatically in favor of the hussar. The superior quality of Polish horses would prove decisive, allowing hussars to control the tempo and range of engagement. The 6-meter lance would provide an enormous reach advantage, enabling hussars to strike fatal blows while remaining completely outside the range of samurai weapons. The psychological impact of the winged appearance would also favor the Poles. Japanese sources from the Korean campaigns suggest that samurai were susceptible to psychological warfare, and the supernatural appearance of winged hussars might prove as effective against Japanese warriors as it did against European enemies. Most critically, the limited speed and agility of Japanese horses would prevent samurai from employing their preferred hit-and-run tactics. Unable to match the speed and maneuverability of hussar mounts, samurai cavalry would be forced into direct confrontations where Polish advantages in equipment and technique would prove overwhelming. Scenario 3. Large formation combat. In a battle between substantial forces, the tactical doctrines of each tradition would determine the outcome. Hussar warfare was specifically designed for breaking enemy formations through coordinated charges, while samurai tactics emphasized individual prowess within coordinated but less tightly controlled formations. The ability of hussars to execute repeated charges would prove devastating against samurai formations. While samurai were trained to maintain formation discipline, their horses' limitations would prevent them from executing the kind of coordinated maneuvers that made hussar charges so effective. The psychological impact of 3,000 winged horsemen executing perfectly coordinated charges would likely break samurai morale before physical contact occurred. The superior reach of hussar lances would allow Polish formations to disrupt samurai battle lines before Japanese warriors could bring their weapons to bear. Even if individual samurai possessed superior fighting skills, they would never have the opportunity to demonstrate them against opponents who could strike from beyond their range. Scenario 4. Siege or defensive warfare. In siege conditions or defensive warfare, the advantages would shift toward the samurai. Their training in multiple weapons and fighting techniques would prove valuable in the varied conditions of siege warfare. The lighter weight and greater flexibility of samurai armor would provide advantages in climbing, urban combat, and fighting in confined spaces. Samurai expertise with the yumibo would also prove valuable in siege conditions, where the superior range and accuracy of Japanese archery could offset the tactical advantages of cavalry. The hussars' primary advantage, the devastating mounted charge, would be largely negated in siege conditions where maneuver space was limited. However, history provides examples of hussars adapting successfully to siege warfare, as demonstrated at the Battle of Kircholm in 1673. Polish commanders proved capable of integrating their cavalry with infantry and artillery forces to achieve objectives that neither arm could accomplish alone. The cultural context, honor versus victory. Beyond the tactical considerations, the fundamental philosophies underlying these warrior traditions would influence any encounter between them. Hussarwaffe emphasized collective effectiveness and decisive victory through coordinated action. Polish tactics were designed to achieve maximum battlefield impact with minimum casualties, as demonstrated by their consistently low loss rates even in victories against vastly superior numbers. The samurai culture, by contrast, emphasized individual honor and the pursuit of personal glory in combat. The practice of announcing one's name and lineage before combat, while admirable from a cultural standpoint, would prove tactically disadvantageous against opponents trained to exploit any opportunity for advantage. The hussar practice of fighting for survival and victory, rather than honor, would provide a significant advantage in life or death combat. While samurai codes of conduct required certain behaviors that might compromise tactical effectiveness, hussars followed what one historian termed the "I want to go home alive" code. This pragmatic approach to warfare consistently proved more effective than honor-bound fighting styles. The final assessment, a contest of eras. In reaching a final assessment of this hypothetical matchup, we must acknowledge that we are comparing warriors from different eras, solving different tactical problems. The samurai tradition evolved to address the specific conditions of Japanese warfare, including the limitations of Japanese horses, the nature of Japanese terrain, and the particular threats faced by Japanese armies. The Winged Hussars, conversely, were designed to meet the challenges of European warfare, including the need to break disciplined infantry formations, defeat contemporary cavalry, and operate effectively against firearms. Their tactical system represented the culmination of centuries of cavalry evolution specifically adapted to European conditions. Nevertheless, the evidence strongly suggests that in direct confrontation, the Winged Hussars would prove superior to the samurai in most scenarios. The fundamental advantages in horse quality, armor effectiveness, weapon reach, and tactical doctrine would prove decisive in the majority of potential encounters. The 6-meter lance reach would be particularly devastating, as it would allow hussars to deliver fatal blows while remaining completely outside the effective range of samurai weapons. The superior speed and endurance of Polish horses would enable tactical control of any engagement, preventing samurai from employing their preferred fighting techniques. Most importantly, the tactical evolution that created the Winged Hussars specifically addressed the challenge of defeating skilled individual warriors through coordinated group tactics. The Hussar system was designed to neutralize the advantages of personal combat skill through superior equipment, training, and tactical coordination. The eternal questions, what if and why it matters. As you drift towards sleep tonight, ponder these eternal questions about the nature of warfare and human achievement. The comparison between Winged Hussars and samurai illuminates fundamental truths about how different cultures approach the challenge of creating effective warriors. The Poles, faced with existential threats from multiple directions, developed a military system focused on maximum battlefield effectiveness. Every aspect of hussar warfare, from horse breeding to armor design to tactical doctrine, was optimized for achieving decisive victory with minimal losses. This pragmatic approach to warfare reflected Poland's position as a relatively small nation surrounded by larger enemies. The Japanese, isolated on their islands and fighting primarily against other Japanese forces, developed a warrior culture that emphasized individual excellence and personal honor. The samurai tradition reflected Japan's unique position as a civilization that could afford to prioritize cultural values over pure military effectiveness. Both traditions achieved greatness within their respective contexts. The Winged Hussars saved Christian Europe at Vienna, turned back the Ottoman tide, and established Poland as a major European power for 2 centuries. The samurai created one of history's most enduring warrior cultures, establishing principles of honor and discipline that continue to influence Japanese society today. Yet in direct confrontation, the evidence suggests that tactical effectiveness would triumph over individual skill, that superior equipment would overcome cultural advantages, and that the pragmatic Polish approach to warfare would prove more successful than the honor-bound Japanese tradition. This conclusion should not diminish our appreciation for either tradition. Both the Winged Hussars and the samurai represent the pinnacle of human achievement in their respective spheres. They remind us that human beings are capable of extraordinary dedication, skill, and courage when fighting for causes they believe worthy. More importantly, both traditions demonstrate the power of systematic training, cultural commitment, and technological innovation in creating military effectiveness. The Poles succeeded through collective action and tactical innovation, while the Japanese achieved greatness through individual perfectibility and cultural discipline. Lessons for our modern age. In our contemporary world, the lessons of this comparison remain relevant. The Polish emphasis on technological advantage, systematic training, and collective effectiveness mirrors modern military thinking. The importance of superior equipment, coordinated tactics, and pragmatic approaches to combat continues to determine military outcomes today. The Japanese focus on individual excellence and cultural values provides equally important insights for modern society. The samurai tradition demonstrates that human achievement is about more than mere effectiveness. It is also about the values we embody and the standards we maintain. Perhaps the most important lesson is that both approaches have their place. The Poles succeeded because they focused ruthlessly on battlefield effectiveness when their nation's survival was at stake. The Japanese created a lasting cultural legacy because they prioritized values that transcended immediate military concerns. In our modern age, we need both the pragmatic effectiveness of the Hussars and the cultural depth of the samurai. We must be willing to do whatever is necessary to defend what we value, while never forgetting why those things are worth defending. The thunder of Hussar hooves and the whisper of samurai steel both echo through history, reminding us of the heights human beings can achieve when they dedicate themselves completely to their chosen path. Whether through collective action or individual excellence, through technological innovation or cultural tradition, through pragmatic effectiveness or honor-bound service, human beings possess the capacity for greatness. The endless dream, warriors eternal. As this tale draws to its close, remember that both the Winged Hussars and the samurai live on in the courage of all who choose duty over comfort, honor over ease, and excellence over mediocrity. Their weapons may be silent, and their battles finished, but their spirit endures in every person who refuses to accept defeat in the face of overwhelming odds. The Hussars' wings still spread wide over those who dare to stand against darkness, while the samurai's blade remains sharp in the hands of all who choose honor over personal gain. In that sense, this battle between traditions continues every day, in every choice we make between effectiveness and values, between collective action and individual achievement, between pragmatic success and honorable failure. The ultimate victory belongs not to either tradition alone, but to the human spirit that created both. The spirit that drives us to become more than we are, to achieve more than seems possible, and to fight for causes greater than ourselves, whether we choose the thunder of cavalry charges or the silence of perfect technique, whether we prefer the brotherhood of the Poxit or the solitude of individual mastery. We carry forward the legacy of warriors who refuse to surrender their dreams. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the ultimate warrior comparison. If you enjoyed this exploration of how two magnificent traditions might have fared against each other, please like this video and subscribe for more historical adventures. Sleep well, And may your rest be as peaceful as the battlefields where these mighty warriors found their eternal glory. Sweet dreams, and remember that in our modern age, we need both the wings of the hussar and the soul of the samurai, the determination to achieve victory when it matters, and the wisdom to understand what victory truly means. May their courage inspire your own battles against whatever darkness you face, and may their excellence remind you that with dedication and honor, even the most impossible dreams can become reality.